Hello, I'm Andrea Macdonald, the founder of ideaXme, a global podcast available in 40 countries, a creator series and a mentor program. We've just launched a podcast playlist, which is going to focus on communications and creativity. What better person to speak to first than one of the most awarded creatives in history? Who are you?
Hi, my name's John Hegarty. I describe myself as a sort of creative provocateur in the sense that I believe that creativity is there to explore and expand and challenge. And I've always found the best creativity did that. It wasn't there as just decoration. It was there to make a point and lead us into new areas and explore our own thinking.
One word arises in most of your presentations and all of your books, and the word is truth. You go to the authenticity of the product. Could you give us an example of one of your most famous commercials that affected culture and really got to the heart of the truth of the product?
Well, I think first of all, I would say that truth is in advertising, certainly, and in life. I mean, the brilliant thing about working in advertising, it teaches you about life. Now, that may seem strange to people, but actually, it is there to try and sustain a relationship with an audience. So therefore, you have to understand human emotions, you have to understand what motivates people, you have to understand how you engage with them. And overall, you're trying to build a long-term relationship. Well, at the foundation of any long-term relationship, it's probably two things, love and truth. Well, you can't have love without truth. So truth comes first. So what you're trying to do is constantly build the truth, build on the truth, discover the truth. What is the truth? And it is profound, and it is meaningful, and it is motivating. And I suppose one of the best campaigns that we did at BBH that actually mined that thought was for Levi's. And the launch campaign for Levi's jeans, the 501 campaign, was a guy going into a laundrette to stonewash his jeans because that's what you used to do. Except we were now launching them in 1985, already stonewashed, so you didn't have to do that. So what we dramatized was the sort of process that people went through back in the sort of 50s, before they could do these things, to get their jeans the way they wanted them. So all we did is we retold a story that people went through. And we had another guy getting into a bath to shrink his jeans because that's what they did, but now you could buy them pre-shrunk, so you didn't have to do that. And that whole 501 campaign was built out of telling some truth about the product. The more you wash them, the better they get. Double stitch for extra strength. And you dramatize the truth, obviously. I mean, that's like mythology does that. It dramatizes love, it dramatizes pain, it dramatizes drama, whatever it might be. And that's what we were doing. And I think that point about truth is more fundamental just in advertising. It's about life as well. And I always remember, I'll tell this story, it was when I was at art school and on that issue. And this is a slightly different story, but the story, we were all drawing and the teacher stopped the class and he said, look, when a drawing is going wrong, because he would go around and help people with their drawings, you know. And he said, when a drawing is going wrong, what you don't do is turn the page over and start again. You keep working on that drawing until it's right. And then you turn the page over. And then there was this wonderful pause. And he said, I suppose I'm talking about life as well, really. And I thought that's how long that was said to me when I was 18, 19. I won't even go into how long ago that was, but that wisdom and that sense of in art, you have to have the truth. You have to have the truth. And there's a wonderful guy, if anybody wants to look him up, and I talk about him a lot, it's called Boris Groys. and he's a lecturer at New York State University in art. And he's got a most wonderful piece about the truth of art. If art doesn't have the truth, then it is just pure decoration and nothing else. Nice, but has no power. So truth has power, and that's what we're all looking for, power.
You've commented a great deal recently about the big tech companies and also Brexit. If there was one issue that you could use your tremendous creative power, what would you address?
Well, I think climate change is the big issue. I mean, we're obviously the world's going through a pandemic at the moment. We all understand that. We don't need to go on about that. In a way, we know how to solve that. I think the issue over and above that is the issue of climate change. And it is one that is seriously worrying because it creeps up on you slowly, and the changes, you begin to notice them, but you can live with them. Those changes are going to get worse and worse, and we are leaving a world to our children and our grandchildren that is in serious danger of collapse in many ways. And I think, you know, that is for me the biggest issue that I could, you know, if I was in a greater position of power, I would be talking about that much more. But again, that gets back to the truth, where people are lying about it. People aren't responding to what we know and what we can see. You know, I have a vineyard in France for all kinds of mad reasons. Don't even go there. You know, why have I done this? You know, and we farm not only organically but biodynamically. So that means you're farming in harmony with nature. Simple way of explaining it. And our harvest, it's the 23rd today of September, finishes today. Normally, 20 years ago, it would have been the middle of October. So that we're 3 weeks earlier. And that to me is alarming. It is alarming what's going on. And I think that is obviously the biggest issue.
Simon Anholt, who is an author, policy advisor and founder of the Good Country Index, and also formerly founder of Translators in Advertising, who worked with Bartle Bogle Hegarty, BBH for short, is thinking of launching a Good Company Index. And this something that springs to mind. ideaXme recently interviewed Robert Bilott, the lawyer who has gone after DuPont for chemical pollution. He would like to know, Simon Anholt would like to know, whether you would be interested in joining him on the Good Company Index, or the formation of the Good Company Index, and going back to potentially using your voice, your creative power in another area. What do you think of that?
Well, it's lovely. It's a job offer, isn't it? I'm getting a job offer. It's actually wonderful online for everybody to see how I'd respond. Well, I'd be more than delighted to talk to Simon about that and to see what we could do. It is something I do feel quite strongly about. That I do think there's a huge cynicism in companies that isn't sustainable, where, you know, on one hand they're polluting and treating people appallingly, and then they have a CSR policy for, you know, supporting local communities or giving money to the National Theatre or whatever it might be. And you know, my wish list would be, I would stop all CSR policies, and I would say, before you can have a CSR policy, put your own house in order. That's where you start. Are you looking after the environment? Are you treating people properly? Are you honouring your obligations to society? And I think we live in a world today that has lost a sense of morality. You know, and I go back to the great companies of you know, that were set up in the 1800s, 1890s or so. You know, Lord Leverhulme, support sunlight, you look at the Cadburys, you look at those great Quaker families who set up these wonderful companies, and they viewed their company as part of the community, and that they had a responsibility to the community, not just to their customers, but to the community as well. And I think in this globalized world, and I'm not anti-globalization as such, but I'm anti-responsibility, where you can just switch production from one place to another and it doesn't give a damn and you just kick people out of work. But hey, I've got the most wonderful CSR policy, and I support, you know, planting more trees as I'm cutting them down over there, you know, and that's what I think we have to look to. And that's why I think having some measure of what companies are doing themselves should be there and put in place. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I'm working at the moment helping a wonderful British company called Angleploys, and they make the most wonderful lamps. They're just a wonderful company, and they are instituting a policy of lifetime guarantee for their products, and that if they can't repair it, they take it back and they recycle it so that it becomes a part of nature again. And I think they view that as an absolute responsibility. I think we live in a very strange world today, don't we, where somehow, you know, I can be, and I'm not picking on fast fashion for the sake of fast fashion, but, you know, I can buy a t-shirt for £5, wear it 5 times and then throw it away. And that company charges me whatever to make that, to buy that t-shirt, and takes no responsibility for the fact that society now has to throw it away. Society has to decide what to do with it. It has to take it, recycle it. So I would make all manufacturers responsible for the recycling of their products. It is your responsibility. Why should society say, okay, you've made it, you've sold it, you've got the profit, you put it in your back pocket, very nice, I'm not against profit, profit's good, I love profit. But actually responsibility has to be extended throughout the life of that product. So those are the sort of things that I think we should be promoting. We should be getting companies to talk about that, think about that, but we don't. Sadly, we are led by people with very, very narrow and very short-sighted horizons, which is one of the great tragedies of our society and our world today.
As I explained at the beginning of this interview, our audience is global. Of course, we cover, with a mission, move the human story forward. We cover subjects from quantum physics right the way through to communications. Could you explain a little more of Bartle Bogle Hegarty, how it was set up, and also when the company that you set up in 2014, Garage Soho,
Garage Soho, yeah.
What your motivations were in doing that, and what this organization is doing now. Importantly, the international context is really interesting for our audiences.
Lovely. Well, I set up BBH in 1982 with 2 wonderful partners, John Bartle and Nigel Bogle. We had been the management team of a very lovely agency called TBWA. We helped set up the London office of TBWA. Prior to that, I was Deputy Creative Director at Saatchi & Saatchi. I helped found Saatchi & Saatchi with Charles and Morris and Tim Bell and some other wonderful people. And in 1982, well, prior to that, we were the management team of TBWA here in London. And, you know, I've always, people say to me, John, do you have a 5-year plan? And I say, no, I have a 5-minute plan, actually. I don't have a 5-year plan. And we were growing that company and it was being very successful. It became Campaign Magazine's first agency of the year back in 1980, I think it was. We were Grand Prix at Cannes with wonderful work for Lego, and it was going along wonderfully. And I think it was Nigel who said, you know, I don't think we're being rewarded correctly here. And I won't go into the details of it, but, and we went, oh, we started chatting about it and we thought, well, we should just renegotiate our contract. We hit a brick wall with that. talking to TBWA about, look, we don't think we're being properly rewarded for what we're doing, and life is like that, sorry about that, and all that sort of thing. And they refused to budge. And so in a way, it put us in the position of having to leave and start our own agency. And I suppose in a way, we never actually intended that. But suddenly it happens to you and we go, right, fine. So what are we going to do? And it gave us a chance to refresh our thinking. It gave us a chance to put in place many of the practices we thought we should be following. One of them, not doing speculative creative pitches, not giving away our services for nothing, and established the agency back in '82. And I'm happy to say it did go off to a wonderful start. I did think at moments, this is madness. Why am I doing this? I'd been at the startup of Saatchi & Saatchi. I'd been the startup of TBWA, which was very, very difficult. And now I'm doing it again. Oh, for God's sake, why am I doing this? But anyway, it all took off and we had a fantastic time. And then we realized very rapidly in the sort of mid to late 80s that the industry was going to become a global industry, and that therefore we needed to have offices in other countries. We thought we might be able to do it all from the UK. Now logic was, well, Hollywood runs a global entertainment business from Los Angeles. Why can't we do it a global communications business from London? And you rapidly realize that is not feasible because you've got to be on the ground in certain places. But again, we didn't want to start a conventional. We've never liked the idea of the word conventional. We didn't want to start a conventional global agency. So we just said we were going to be in the most important places in the world, and we'll just have 7 or 8 offices covering the globe. But again, everybody thought we were going to go west to New York, and instead of that, we went east and now set our first office up in Singapore. And so we grew it from there, and it was great fun, brilliant doing it. We work with some truly wonderful people. The agency's still there. I'm no longer part of that now. John retired at the end of '99. Nigel and I left in 2014, 15. So, but the agency's doing well, doing some wonderful work, and we're very, very proud of it.
You've just launched, you still work with them to a certain degree, don't you? You've just launched 360. Could you tell us about that?
Well, it's just really, it's an app where you can go and you can ask all kinds of questions. And from my past and my writings and my thoughts, you can get an answer from John Hegarty on that particular issue. So I'm very proud of that, and wonderful that they've done that. But in 2014, on leaving BBH, and as I say, you never leave BBH. It's always in your soul, especially for me anyway. It's always in your blood. I set up what we call the Garage here in Soho, and it's an early stage investment company helping get young ideas, new ideas up off the ground with finance and guidance and help. And we say, don't just start a business, build a brand, getting these young companies to understand the value of brand building, because so many don't. They just think it's about having a great idea and inventing a bit of tech, and that's wonderful. All that's absolutely essential, but ultimately that will be copied by somebody else. So you have to start thinking about what kind of brand are you? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And I've got a view today that brands are more movements than just brand. Think about a movement rather than a brand. And I think you get the sense of what the world wants from you. What are you changing? What are you bringing to the world? What is it that you're doing that the world needs? So we try and guide people in that way, and it's great fun. And again, I go back to, I'm using so many of my lessons in advertising in doing this. And one of the ones that I always laugh at, I'm, as the creative guy, I'd be in, when I was at BBH, I'd be in a client meeting and I'd be selling the work and desperate to sell the work because it was great and that. And of course, you did your presentation, then, a conversation, we go, this is really interesting. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the state of the business. And so often the conversation would go to the client saying things like, well, we're not doing very well in the Northeast, and maybe we need a bit more shelf on-shelf promotion, maybe our distribution isn't right, maybe the packaging could be adjusted. And so often I'd be sitting there thinking, have you ever thought of making a better product? And that would be my solution to 9/10 of the problems that clients were having. Well, you ever thought about making a better product? But they always thought marketing as opposed to the product. So I'm now in a situation when somebody comes in and pitches an idea for a business. I say, is it better than any of the products out there? How is it different? Why is it different? And is it better than what I can get? And as soon as I hear them say, no, but we can, I say, no, thank you. I only want to market a better product. And I mean, you know, we all measure what we mean by a better product. There are lots of ways of measuring it. So that was one of the great lessons that advertising teaches you. And of course, it goes back to that thing. It teaches you to tell the truth. Because again, you're trying to build a long-term relationship.
Can you talk to us a little bit of the type of organisations you work with? I mean, there's an incredibly broad spectrum from the music industry right the way through to innovative cooling systems. Can you talk to us a little bit of that, and also the sort of global context of these organisations?
Well, first of all, we're completely agnostic in terms of what product area we're in. People often say to me, also, John, you're doing media and tech. And I go, no, I don't, you know, if somebody comes up with a better bicycle pump, I'll kind of, you know, think about that. So, you know, one of the great things, again, about advertising that I loved about it, and many things I loved about it, but one of the things is that, you know, in the morning you could be working in the automotive industry, and by lunchtime you'd be doing something in fashion. And then in the afternoon you were talking to somebody about hospitality, and then there'd be something about food or whatever it might be. There's this wonderful eclectic set of skills that you needed to develop. So we have that approach here at the Garage, and we just go, you know, is it different? We have a series of questions we ask, but to be honest with you, you ask those questions and you still come up with answers that it was a complete failure. We answered all the questions, but it didn't work. But we go from, you know, a company making a mattress that is delivered. We go to Soho Radio, who are trying to establish a very different type of radio network. We go to a wonderful cooling system called Shore Chill, that uses water to help cool a refrigerator, which means it can be off-grid. So it can work in Africa where the grid is a major problem. So we look at it and think, you know, the world could do with this. This would be good for the world. So if somebody turned up with an app, a fashion app, we might go, no, I think the world's got enough fashion apps, thank you very much. Or we wouldn't touch gambling. We don't want to be involved in that. But we are involved in a fashion company called Huey. Hardly ever worn it. It's about exchanging your wardrobe. Don't throw it away, exchange it. And that's, I think, a future for fashion. So we look at interesting ideas because it makes the promotion of that so much more interesting. You know, the great skill of advertising, and I always say this, is that and the use of creativity is, you know, it could take very comparative products and it could dramatize the difference between one and the other. And that was its skill, whether you like it or not. You know, I mean, ultimately, the difference between an Audi and a BMW, you could argue is marginal. Yes, one's rear-wheel drive, the other's four-wheel drive. There are differences, but, you know, they are apparent. But the advertising dramatizes those differences, or one soft drink and another soft drink. You know, really, what is the difference between Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola? It's the marketing. But, you know, one's found and one's realized those products with fundamental differences are much easier to market, especially if those differences can be and are meaningful. So you look for things, we look for things that are genuinely different, contribute, we hope, to a better world, and companies that genuinely believe in building an interesting organization. We've had some success and some failures. Isn't that brilliant?
You've written 2 books, Hegarty on Advertising and Hegarty on Creativity. they're really incredible books. I mean, I could say,
Oh, thank you.
I would say that anyone from any sector working in any country should read them because they can be applied to really pretty much any business sector, scientific sector. Alan Furman, who is the founder of Tribal Heart and has been in the creativity and creation business for the last 20 years. He is an enormous fan of yours.
Oh, thank you, Alan. If you're watching, Alan, brilliant. I love it.
He would like to know if another book's in the pipeline.
Well, I have to say, Alan, right now, no. I always remind people that I'm actually an art director. I'm not a writer. And that, you know, I used to spend my life going around to all the writers in the agency as an art director, and obviously as the creative director, reminding them that words were a barrier to communication. And it would just be annoy them, really. I liked annoying them, but to get them to understand that, you know, with words, you've really got to be careful how you use them. You've got to pare them down. You've got to kind of just make them absolutely succinct, so they really carry the meaning that you intend rather than just waffling on. And so much writing is just waffling on. So I did find writing, you know, I always remember saying to the editor when they convinced me at Thames and Hudson to do my first book on advertising, I said to the editor, Andrew, and I said, so Andrew, how many, you know, sort of roughly how many words do you think this would be? And he went, oh, well, I think about between 60,000 and 70, John, would be about right. I'm going, I spent, what? I spent my life taking words out, not putting them in. But interestingly, when I approached it, there was a couple of pieces of advice that I remember. And I was years ago doing something for the book publishing industry, interesting, just about marketing books. And a wonderful author called Frank Delaney, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, came to interview me. No relationship to any of the Delaneys in advertising, by the way, which he said, I'm fascinated. There are so many Delaneys in the advertising industry. He was no relation to them. Anyway, lovely, lovely man, interviewed me. And at the end of the interview, he said, so John, when are you going to write your book? And I said, no, Frank, you know, I'm an art director. I work with a writer. I do the pictures. You know, I simplify. I do pictures, and the writer does the words. And he looked at me in a very quizzical way, and he said, "But John, writing is just describing pictures," which I thought was a wonderfully liberating way of talking about writing, and that stayed in my mind. I thought that's rather lovely. Actually, writing is just describing pictures, which I thought. So if you're an art director, you can do it. And then the other thing I remember. And I always remember reading A Year in Provence and Peter Mayle's book. And I thought it's a genius book because it started in January and that was chapter 1. Chapter 2 was February and it ended in December. So it was a wonderful arc. And that's the other thing that you've got to have with the book. You've got to have a narrative arc. And of course, you know, that's why so many detective novels are sold and murder mysteries, because, you know, somebody's murdered, somebody has to resolve the murder. You know, it's a boom, narrative arc. And so I bore that in mind. And so when I started to write the book, I just sat down and remembered the first day I walked into an advertising agency holding my portfolio. And that's where I started, and that's how I did. But once I got going, it was quite interesting. And then the editor said, well, no, I think we should move that around, put that there, change that around. And he was brilliant. Andrew Saniger, the editor at Thames and Hudson, was brilliant. A long answer to a very short question. No, I might do a book on just my creative work and the things that I've done and the thoughts that I've had and stuff like that. I might do that. And I'm very posy because it might be just, you know, the typography would be H-E-G and then on the second line A-R-T-Y, Arty. Because I used to sometimes get my nickname at school, sometimes was Hegsy most of the time, but sometimes it was Arty. So I might do it that way. Anyway, but that's a sort of, who knows? It's in the back of my mind. Alan, stay loyal. I might come up with something. Keep up the great work.
You obviously get to meet all sorts of fascinating people right the way across sectors. But who have you connected with richly to move your human story forward? Someone who has, I don't know, affected your human journey, not even necessarily only career, but who you are today?
Oh gosh, that's a big question, that one, Andrea. I was one of those incredibly lucky people. I had 3 incredible teachers at periods in my life who really spurred me forward. So I had 3. Most people talk about having 1. I had 3. Aren't I lucky? Power of 3. I've always been fascinated by the power of 3. I've met truly wonderful people. But actually, I've been more inspired by ideas than people. And I think ideas don't let you down because they're an idea. There's something that you give birth to, or somebody has given birth to. And I've sort of respected those more than looked to people. Not that I've met truly wonderful people, fantastic people. With great sadness, we've just heard of the death of Terence Conran, and I was on the board of trustees for almost 20 years for his museum, his design museum, and I got to know Terence very well, who was a very, very inspirational man in many ways, flawed in others, but then so many great people. But I think you're rarely let down by a great idea, and I've always looked to great ideas, the spirit of those ideas. I'm just out of fascination, actually. I'm just watching Simon Sharma's The Romantics, which is a series on BBC. I recommend everybody try and watch it. I've just watched 2 of those episodes, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it is about ideas. And it's about, at the time of the Enlightenment, 1700s, a whole group of artists, writers, people like that believed in romanticism rather than logic, because at that time logic was being, this is it, science has all the answers, and it was reducing people down to numbers and dots and digits and machinery and stuff like that. And the romantics, the poets, I know Wordsworth, Victor Hugo, people like that were talking about the spirit. And this was an idea, and this is an idea, you see. It's not contained and not owned by one person. Other people can become part of it. So it's ideas that drive me forward. So I do honestly, if you're out there and you can get BBC iPlayer, do watch it. Simon Sharma, The Romantics. It's just absolutely brilliant. And it's ideas like that that I just get so enthusiastic about.
Leonardo da Vinci said, "Learn how to see. Everything is connected." If you could make the world see one thing, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I suppose in a way, the thing that you want the people to see is honesty. And again, that I go back to my truth thing, but honesty, I think, is a huge quality in everything. And I say, I'm going to go back to it. I make wine. All right, I've got a vineyard, I make wine in the south of France. And what I'm trying to do is to make that wine as true as possible to nature. Somebody said to me, "So John, what kind of wine do you want to make?" And I said to them, you're asking the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, what kind of wine does my vineyard want to make? What would nature make if I was to work with nature? And I think that honesty is something that I think we should try, and it's hard. It's very, very difficult because you have to temper honesty. How do I look today, darling? I actually look like shit, but I'm not going to say that. You actually, darling, you look pretty good, actually. Was it a difficult night's sleep last night? Was it, I mean, so we know that. But I think we're suffering today from a lack of integrity, a lack of honesty, and a lack of morality. And I think business has lost a moral compass. It doesn't seem to have that anymore, where it only worships at the altar called profit. Profit is fundamentally important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but it's not a profit for just itself. We've got to remember we're there, everything. We're there to sort of reflect how we can be better in this world. So I think that sense of honesty is something that I think we should pursue. And again, it comes back out of truth.
Sir John Hegarty, thank you so much for your time. And as we say on the ideaXme show, for moving the human story forward. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Andrea, pleasure. And lovely talking to you. And please, everybody, watch The Romantics.